Hey everyone, this is Marcus Leto, the president of V1 Interactive and creator of Disintegration, as well as father of the Master Chief and co-creator of the Halo universe, and you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I've got the honor and privilege of interviewing the one, the only, my friend, Simran Whitham of Triheart Interactive. Man, how's it going? Welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much, Mekel, mate. It's great to be back. How are you doing?
I'm running off of a lot of Player One coffee. Get yours, link in the description below. But yes, I'm running off a lot of coffee right now. It's been a wild couple weeks. I know, and for the audience who may not know this, Simran and I, we actually did this. We recorded this podcast. We did an initial one a couple of weeks ago, and then I had some technical snafus. We'll just put it that way. And I was like, hey, we re-record it. He's like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So we're back at it again, and I'm making sure I'm backing up everything locally too. So hey,
yeah, just means that we can go through it all, because I know you love listening to my voice deep down. That's the main reason. I think this technical hiccup was just, an excuse for you to just get me back in this chat room. I think I'm suspecting some of it.
Hey, you got a sexy voice, man. I can't help it.
Is it because I'm British?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Oh.
Yes. I think listen to American voices all day, man. It gets tiring.
I mean, we do have. I could do my proper British accent if you would prefer.
I mean, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to hear you in the game.
Oh God, no! Never doing voice acting ever again. No, never.
Nice. Nice.
Too much localization. My brain couldn't handle that Excel form even if I tried.
Oh man, let's go ahead and kick it off with introductions, and go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's talk about your company, your role in the company, and plug your social media, and
do the whole intro thing. So I'm Simran Whitham. I'm one of the directors at Triheart Interactive, an indie studio from Manchester in the United Kingdom, who are the developers behind the Ottoman Empire for Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam, which launched on the 2nd of July, and we're also the team behind the UK's largest community gaming event and games industry party, Manchester Gamers Unite. Did it in one go.
Awesome. Yeah. And where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so for me personally, you can find at Simran Whitham on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Simran_Whitham. And then for Triheart Interactive, you can find us at Triheart Int on Facebook, Triheart Interactive, Instagram, Triheart Interactive. Mm-hmm. And on Twitch, guess it, Triheart Interactive. And then for Manchester Gamers Unite, Facebook, Manchester Gamers Unite. On Twitter, at Man Gamers, and on Instagram, Gamers Unite _Manchester. I think that's them all. I think I got them all. I should know that question off by heart, to be honest.
I mean, you're better at it than I am, like in the sense of memorizing all your social media outlets. Because I'm like, I think I'm here. Am I on TikTok? No, that's bad.
I'm just looking at the bottom list of all the ones you've got to remember here, or just on this little thing. So I don't blame you for that. I'm already that hurts my head just looking at all the brands you just plug in on this one podcast that you're available on.
Dude, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah,
but man, it's been crazy in the world lately, man. Especially with game development, a lot of games have been pushed back or delayed a little bit, and then we have the new generation of consoles coming, and none of us know what's going on with them, when they're coming out, and it's just been this year has been. Which is crazy because it's the launch year for all the new consoles coming out. All the major last hurrahs for a lot of the current generation consoles. This is supposed to be that year, but hey, stuff happens. But I want to ask you, from your perspective, being in the gaming industry, what was it like for you guys? you guys experience any major delays or anything with Ottoman Empire, or were you on time with it, or how did COVID-19 affect you guys?
Yeah, we suffered delays just as much as anyone, I say, because obviously you've got the teams at Xbox and Nintendo who deal with the lot check system. For anyone who doesn't know what lot check is basically a system that all the developers, AAA or indie, have to submit their games through to get certified for the platform. Basically, because all their teams are working from home, that means communication slowed down a lot faster between us and the development and the handles that we were communicating with. And that just means that we had to push back the game by just a few weeks, just because obviously these checks and systems were taking longer and longer for us to be able to actually do a release date. And I say, it's impacted everyone from the major players. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like to have the actual physical copies of a game, like Naughty Dog with The Last of Us, or Ghost of Tsushima not being able to launch all their physical copies on time in loads of stores across the world. I can feel very empathetic to those guys. Just, I can't even imagine what that's like. I mean, suffering a delay for the digital version is enough and hard enough already, so a physical copy, that's got to be difficult. But yeah, that's only been the sort of like major disruption we faced from COVID. And of course the fact that we've launched a party game during a climate where it's hard for people to sit in the same room together and meet up. But despite the fact we've done okay, which is great to hear, and people have been enjoying the game and stuff like that. So we did okay, and we launched the game during a pandemic, and that's a badge that not many developers are ever going to get given. So I'm wearing that badge proudly, metaphorically, because I don't have it here at the moment.
Well, not only that, your game has been doing incredibly well. Like, it's been,
thank you.
Critically received, and it's a great game. Otterman Empire. If you guys haven't picked it up, definitely pick it up. It's on all major platforms, and it's the concept of it. Let's dive into that. Let's talk about the concept of the game, because it's like literally what happens when you mix Mario Party with Splatoon and in an arena, and then there you go. Like, there's so many different mechanics to the game. The fact that you decided to make a co-op game locally in an era where we're just doing nothing but like online co-op is absolutely genius. Like, let's talk about it. Yeah,
of course. So the actual origin story is that myself and my fellow co-founders at the studio, 4 of us who were university students at the time, basically, I say, we kind of felt like the market was very saturated by a lot of online experiences at the time. And we come from the generation of remembering those good old split screen days and creating a shared experience of sitting down with your friends on your couch playing the game. The GoldenEye period, GoldenEye is a very, very big inspiration for us. And actually just creating a physical memory of your friends side by side. And also in today's modern gaming, like, split screen is practically unheard of, and especially on the Nintendo Switch, which was a big thing for us. So we went to a place called Crazy Pedro's. I don't think it's really prominent in the US or anywhere. I think it's just mainly UK based. It's a pizza parlor, absolutely amazing. And we sat down and ate a chicken and waffle and syrup pizza together, and we basically said, let's make Mario Kart meets Splatoon with a bit of Overwatch, with a dash, I'm talking like a little bit of cheesy spice of Plants vs Zombies. And that's what we kind of wanted to do. So we said, right, let's do all those. And bear in mind, we were a bunch of naive students at this point. So making an experience like that as your first game is a tall order. So, and obviously, as we went through the development, we realized that actually how hard this was going to be. But despite everything, it took us 3 years of development. We've got there at the end, and we've made our dream effectively. It's out there on 3 major consoles, 3 major platforms, which I can't even believe is possible. But yeah, the Ottoman Empire has had a mixed development. You can find that out in our documentary as well, but I'm happy to talk about that. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey to get this game out in the public and see people playing it and, reading the reviews. It's mainly been getting 8, 7, 6s out of 10, which is, for a first game, I'm very, very proud of. Just to see those reviews come in and see people enjoying it. Playing it with the families is a big one for me, watching kids play it with their parents and friends playing split screen, that's the big one for me. So, but the kind of origin story is that we just were a bunch of students who wanted to make a shared party experience, and over the years, the Ottoman Empire has developed into something much more.
Definitely has, and it's definitely like when you play, you can definitely feel all those inspirations, because you and I, we definitely come from the same generation of playing like GoldenEye back in the day, and I think a lot of the current generation of gamers, like, if you were to put GoldenEye in their hands right now, they'd be like, oh, what is this? But they don't understand like how revolutionary that was, being able to play 4-player split screen, and it's like playing games now that just don't have that, and going to Ottoman Empire and playing a game with so much variety, so much customization and characters. It's really one of those experiences. I have definitely enjoyed it. Like, my reviews on the way out, probably it'll be out by the time this podcast goes up. But I've taken my time with it because, like, playing it with my wife and other family that comes over occasionally. Yes, for social distancing. I'm over here. They're all the way over there. We're still playing it because it's
that's the beauty of split screen. That's the beauty of split screen. You can play it socially distancing.
You're right. And it's like enjoying it. Like, it's literally, I was telling my wife, I was playing with my wife with it, and she was saying, like, I haven't played anything like this since in 64 days, since the original, PS4 or PS1. And I'm like, yeah, like, they don't do games like this anymore. And I'm wondering, like, in your opinion, why do you think that's such, I guess in today's era, like, why is it such a foreign concept to do local co-op? It's weird.
It's not as uncommon as you'd think. It's mainly within the indie community that it's sort of still alive and kicking in. It's just the time. It's one thing. It's culture. It comes down to culture. As we've entered this age of online experiences and these more quick to enter experiences, and these massive open worlds that we've seen, even with Ubisoft, they're changing their entire development and culture strategies. They're making more open world areas and more open world games, as we've seen with the Assassin's Creed franchise. Even though we're seeing less of what made Assassin's Creed great, they're going where the market is, which is open world experiences and more content. And that's just been kind of the aspect, because there's such a big implementation on online, and like the money that can be made from online, that's kind of where culturally developers are choosing to focus their attention, because that's where the monetary value comes from. And as at the end of the day, a game design studio is a business. They've got to make money. That's how all businesses work. So naturally, as a culture, they're going to gravitate towards the thing that's bringing in the most revenue, which is online experiences and open world experiences at the moment. So those are kind of like the two things where we're at culturally. But there is a room for that old split screen shared experiences. It's quite niche at the moment, but if it's done right, it can do really, really well. I'd say, even though it wasn't split screen, something like Overcooked, the original Overcooked, was only local play. It didn't have online, and there was a huge market for that, as we've seen with the massive selling of Overcooked. Move Out, which was a recent Team 17 title, only had Steam Remote Play. Great success again, and it was only local without Steam Remote Play. There is that hunger for. And especially now that we're kind of entering an age where, we're starting to recognize the effects of technology kind of increasing people's isolation. People, I think it's like 1 in 4 people describe themselves as very lonely, even though we live in the most technically connected age possible. And that was a big thing for us as developers, is creating an experience that kind of captures that need for a tribe and that need to kind of sit down as a group and create a shared experience. Because you can play an online game with your friends anytime, but there's something special about having a friend next to you, and actually creating that. As we come from the same generation, like getting a kill just before your friend or doing that one up on your friend, that memory is something that's so much better. It doesn't even matter if you caught the experience on like the PlayStation share function or you recorded it with OBS. There's something magical about getting that there with that person next to you, in their presence. And we're starting to see that acceptance again. So I think now that the market has not necessarily become saturated with online experiences, but because the market has been left without this local couch co-op experience for so long, people are starting to gravitate towards welcoming it back, because it's a welcome change from the norm, which has become the online experiences that we've become so accustomed to in today's society. So I think we're starting to see it on the rise again slowly, mainly within the indie community. Again, I use Overcooked and Move Out as a great example, just because they are major successes when you look at something like with local emphasis. So we are seeing that sort of shift towards games slowly bringing it back, but it's mainly prominent within the indie community as well. If that answers your question.
It does.
I have this amazing talent for turning one topic into like 40 different topics, so just feel free to tell me about bambling at any point.
No, it's fine, dude. That perfectly answered the question. And it's one of the things, like, I really want to say, like, when it comes to the indie market, because, I've been playing a lot of indie games lately, especially for review. And one of the most recent ones I played was Panzer Paladin. And I really have to say, like, and this is not a knock at all at AAA studios, but when I want to have fun, I'm playing an indie game, because indie devs, it's like you guys understand what gaming is about. You understand what fun's about. You can make games that have so much creative expression and passion in them that it makes me wonder, in a way, why is that kind of being lost in a lot of AAA experiences? Like, you got your great games like Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, and then the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077 that had that balance, but like the passion that I see in indie games, the love letter to gaming from bygone eras, even with hints of modern touches, it's just amazing what you guys do in the indie market. Like, what is, like, I know I'm this is like 5 some questions in one, but what is like your passion of making that happen? Like when it came to Ottoman Empire, like all these different touches, how did it just come together? You're like, this is for the gamer.
Yeah, of course. So I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. So making a game is very difficult. Like, it is very difficult. Like, people do not understand just how much time, money, and effort goes into these things. Like, it's a lot of systems, a lot of micromanagement, a lot of research, a lot of testing, and just a lot of production. But in terms of the passion, for us, it becomes a mixed bag. It's a mixture of, making sure that the experience is worthy of being on the market. So, we claim that we're bringing split screen to Xbox and Nintendo Switch. Okay, but we've got to be worthy. We want to make sure that we're worthy of bringing that to these platforms. Because we're the first couch co-op split screen shooter that's ever been put on Nintendo Switch, featuring Otters. So for us, that was a big honor. And I think it was the passion and the idea of this unique USP we had, which was, a local couch co-op split screen shooter about otters and jetpack with vertical gameplay. That alone was such a unique USP for the team. And we said, right, this is what's going to drive us, especially for Nintendo Switch, because the Nintendo Switch was always the intention for the game to be developed for to begin with. But in terms of like where that passion comes from, this is where you can get in a bit of muddy water. So indie developers have a lot more creative freedom than a lot of people in AAA, because a lot of game design, as I say, a AAA studio is a business. At the end of the day, all game design studios are a business, and they have investors, and they have people that they have to answer to, and they have to meet these quotas. And as a business, they have to follow trends. They have to basically kind of, I know no one ever sets out to make a bad game. There's never, I don't believe any developer has ever created a game with the intention of it being bad. But a lot of these AAA companies have got investors that they have to answer to. They've got boxes that they need to tick. It needs to have online. It needs to feature guns. So because of the amount of funding that gets put into these things and the requirements they're expected to meet, they get a lot less creative freedom to work with, because they've got to work on meeting these quotas so that they as a business can survive, which is completely understandable. But with an indie developer, because obviously the downside is they don't have as much funding, but from like a publisher or an investor, but the plus side of that is they're not playing with anyone's money, so that they can be extremely creative, and that they can take their time and craft these truly unique experiences that otherwise investors or publishers might not necessarily see as a beneficial move, because they might not see the monetary value come out of it. Let's look at something like Fall Guys, the recent release of Fall Guys. Obviously, when you think about Fall Guys has done an amazing job, and I know some of the team over there, and I'm so proud of them for some of the stuff that they've done. But when you actually look at Fall Guys, it's actually a very simple game. Like, it's simple. The art style is quite low poly, it's well polished, and their servers broke because they didn't expect the amount of traffic that they got on the deck. But as a game, it's quite simple, and they didn't expect it to do that well, and it just did. So that's kind of where the joys of creative freedom can come from. Because of Fall Guys' gameplay loop and its creativity, it's done better than it can, and that's the kind of one of the beauties of being an indie, is that you can create these experiences, may or may not do well, and as more indies like Fall Guys do well, they set this precedent for publishers and investors and say, look, games like this can make it, as Overcooked did for split screen and not split screen, but local couch co-op experiences. So, sorry, I've done that thing where I walk off on another topic again. But yeah.
Talk. I love it.
But yeah, what drove us as a development team is kind of the idea of creating something that was truly unique that hasn't been done, which was a split screen shooter featuring vertical otters with jetpacks on Nintendo Switch. And we are the first developer to have ever done that for Nintendo Switch, and I am really proud of the team just for that. and we're not the first split screen shooter on Xbox, but we are the first one featuring Otters. So we get half a badge there for that one. And for us, it was mainly about crafting something that truly, there was a gap in the market, and for us that was split screen couch co-op, which no one is doing at the moment. And because we live in an age where online, it's very scary to release a game like that these days when you've got so much online competition. So that drove us to make the experience the best it could be, so that it could compete with some of these people. Like, the average player of Fortnite might just want to shift towards something playing local with their friends, but still catch that art style. So the art style of the Ottoman Empire was heavily derived from Plants vs Zombies in Fortnite, just so it could appeal to all these different types of gamers and groups effectively. And that for us was kind of like one of the big USPs as well. We could never actually be an Overwatch or a Fortnite, because we don't have millions. I mean, I read an article a few weeks back that Fortnite haven't even spent 10% of the money they've earned from it, which is ridiculous. I wish I had 1% of that budget. I'm totally not envious there, Tim Sweeney, and he's about to make loads of money suing Apple as well. So that budget for Fortnite is just going to keep going and going and going and going. Yeah. Oh god.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, that was all I was going to say. Really. As developers, creating a shared experience that you could sit down with your friends, your nan, your family, and create those memories that, like what we used to have with the GoldenEye generation, of just that shared experience and creating memories with your friends is what really drove us as developers, as well as being the first ever local couch co-op split screen shooter on Nintendo Switch.
And one of the things I definitely want to ask, because I've seen a lot of other developers, more so AAA developers, and it comes to indie developers, but with the exception of one, I know Bloodstain had its performance issues, but still kind of has performance issues on the Switch. But what I wanted to ask is, when you were developing it for, the Switch and for the other consoles, were there any issues as far as making there be a level of parity with performance? Because I noticed a lot of games struggle on the Switch, but there's a high level of parity right here between playing on Xbox, playing it on the Switch. How did you guys manage that technical marvel?
So I will say this, optimization is a very difficult thing. I think this is something that a lot of gamers don't realize is such a challenge for game developers, optimizing a game for a console. So for example, you could make a beautiful game that could run on the highest 60 frames, 4K, not even do any damage to your PC whatsoever. You put that game on Nintendo Switch or Xbox, it's going to run at 3 frames per second because it's not been optimized properly for that platform. Each platform's hardware requirements require different levels of optimization, and it is without going into hours upon hours of technical detailing, that is a very difficult line to walk. It is very difficult. No developer intends for their game to launch on a platform less optimized than the previous platform or any of the others. It's just each platform comes with its own set of limitations, and some of those things are completely out of the developer's hands. So due to a bunch of NDA stuff, I can't really talk about some of this stuff, but the Switch's hardware, for example, doesn't allow for 60 frames per second, and just because of the amount of memory that it has in it, so you immediately have to do tons of art animation and stripping, and sometimes just removing shadows entirely just to get the game to actually run on the platform. Because again, something like The Witcher, for example, you look at The Witcher 3, it runs, but it doesn't look nice. That is no disrespect to CD Projekt Red. I love The Witcher. I'm a huge Witcher fanboy. Got a massive Geralt thing right there in the corner of my bedroom. But The Witcher 3, it has got very low texture quality on the Switch. Because again, that game, that's probably the best it could get. And I think that's a technical achievement within itself, that that porting team was able to get a game that size on Nintendo Switch. So I don't know how they did that to begin with. And
it's all on the cart too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. and the thing is, when they so you have to basically go through this thing that's called a lot check system, which is basically all developers do it, AAA and indie, and basically that's to make sure that the platform, they review your game and they make sure that you're ready to go on the platform. So they'll check for things like bugs, they'll check for things like localization issues, things if it's misleading the player, is it playable, is it broken? Because they obviously want the best game possible that can be on their platform. That's what any platform wants. So we submit to these systems, and obviously they require a certain level of optimization. But then there's these periods where obviously we basically have to work with what's called dev kits. Developers basically get given a dev kit, which allows them to test how the game would perform on that system. So like I mentioned before, you could have the most beautiful game for PC, but as soon as you start development, you really want to get your hands on a dev kit so that you can put the game on the dev kit and then test how that game's going to run, and then you can optimize the game as you progress through development, which is the ideal way to do a game. The last thing you want to do is develop the game at the end and then think, okay, I've made a great PC game, let's put it to Switch. And then you're going to spend about a year, maybe 6 months just doing optimization for your game just to get it on Switch, because you didn't think about things like your shadows or your lighting or or the amount of detail that your world possesses, because the Switch just can't render all that stuff. It's impossible for the hardware to manufacture it. So it's a very hard line to walk, optimization, because you don't really know what your game is capable of until you actually start testing it. And obviously you're going to have to make sacrifices. We had to make sacrifices with the initial launch of the Ottoman Empire. There were like shadows, we had to really take those down, because the Switch really struggles with rendering shadows if it's not done right. We saw it with Outer Worlds. They had to strip back a lot of their detail because of that's just the way. And we work in Unreal, so I can tell just from looking at Outer Worlds port of Switch, like, props to that team again, props to the guys at Obsidian. I know how painful that is to have to strip out assets out of Unreal Engine just for a Switch port, because again, there are many different factors at time. What type of engine you're using, because Unreal is great for creating art assets. It's great for creating beautifully stunning visual games. But Nintendo Switch doesn't like games that use like ray tracing and all these high res details. So, Unreal's got a bit of a hateful relationship with the Nintendo Switch dev kit, but it's got a really good relationship with the Xbox dev kit, because Xbox is better built for that, better hardware, which is why you see pretty much no difference between the Xbox version and the PC version of Ottoman.
Yeah.
Because, it's just, it comes down, there are many different variables. Also, it ties into how good your optimization team are, how good your art team are at optimizing their assets. These are all things that go on behind the scenes that nobody really knows about. But again, teams don't intend for one port to look nicer than the other. It's just sometimes there are just things that have to be stripped back so that the game can run on that platform. There are certain things that might just be out of that team's control. It also depends entirely as well how good your porting team is. Again, that's why I really want to speak to whoever the hell did CD Projekt Red Witcher 3, because that they deserve an award, frankly, in my opinion. Porting is one of those things that it takes time, which is why you might see a delay on some things. Like Outer Worlds took a long time to come out on Switch, but it's such a big game, it's going to take a while, because they've got to go back and optimize a lot of that stuff. They've got to strip stuff back, and it's just one of those. You've got to. It's a fine line to walk when optimizing a game, and these are sort of things that I think gamers sort of don't know about, which is understandable, because no one talks about this stuff because it's boring and no one really is interested in it. But yeah, optimization it's a constant battle. Like even now behind the scenes, we're still finding things to optimize for Ottoman, for future content stuff. Optimization is one of those battles that never truly ends. There's always something you could be doing better, but it's just one of those, you do the best you can as a developer and make sure your game runs as best as possible on the platform. Sometimes it works out well, sometimes you need to work on other areas, but the main thing to keep in mind is whenever you see a port that doesn't look as good as the other one, that there is a reason for that, whether it's hardware or, the porting team could have just done these little bit areas a little bit better and stuff like that. There are many factors to consider. It's not just one baseline, oh, they didn't program this thing correctly, so this is why this port looks terrible. I wish it was that simple. I really do, because then I could easily blame it on that one thing. But optimization's a constant task for game developers. Constant task.
And it's one of the things, like, I want to touch on what you're saying, like, mostly, when it comes to the gamers not understanding, a majority not understanding what the process is that goes into game development. And I can speak on that because with a lot of gamers I've interacted with, they'll be like, oh, how come this game is not releasing day and day with the Switch? How come this game costs more on the Switch than it does on, PlayStation, Xbox, or Steam? How come, it looks this? How come they can't make it look the same as it does on other platforms? And then I'm thinking to myself, and sometimes I've tried to, okay, I will preface this. Nintendo fans are very passionate. I'll say that. They're very, very passionate. I understand. But like a lot of times when I'm trying to explain this stuff to them, I'm like, you don't understand when you have this vision and you're gonna put it on PC, put it on consoles, and then you have to look at the Switch. It's an amazing console.
Oh, I love the Switch so much. It's such a beautiful, aesthetically, it's a beautiful. Like my PlayStation's probably just sat there now crying like, you what? You what? But the Switch is an aesthetically beautiful console, but it's very difficult to make a game on. Very difficult.
Yeah, and it's just something that it just seems like a lot of Nintendo fans are not understanding of. And then like when you have games that are ported from last generation, like with 2K, they brought the Borderlands trilogy collection. I want to say, well, technically it is a trilogy because it's 1, 2, and then pre-sequel, and then they brought what's the other one? BioShock. Then you have a lot of Nintendo fans saying, "Oh, these are ports of old games. Like, why are they costing more?" And it's like, the fact that they look as good as they do and run as good as they do, that's a technical marvel.
Oh, of course, because a lot of these old games as well, what you've got to take into consideration is, a lot of AAA studios will have known that the Switch was coming a few years in advance. Because a lot of AAA companies, like Activision or EA, they know what consoles are coming out. Like, for example, Sumo Digital, who were developing the new Sackboy for PlayStation 5, they knew what the PlayStation 5 was going to be before the PlayStation 4 was even out. So they do get advance notice, but they don't really know that much about how the hardware is going to run. So they'll get given a brief idea, and obviously to them, they've still got to figure out how to port these old games to a console and make it work. Because when they designed this initial game, they didn't design it to work on a console that they didn't even have any idea of what was going to exist at the point. So the fact that some of these old games can even be optimized to work on there is a great achievement within themselves.
And it just makes me wonder, like with this coming generation, the new Xbox, the new PlayStation, we got computers with the new the RTX series of graphic cards. Makes me wonder, is Nintendo effectively going to be forced to have to make more powerful hardware to not have to have developers be limited in what they're doing, or have to creatively limit themselves just to make something work on their platform? It's something I've been very curious about, and I know there's been for years like rumors about the Switch Pro, Nintendo's going to do this, and I understand that Nintendo is not played by the, I guess you could say, played by the rules of we're going to follow the suit. No, Nintendo's always kind of done their own thing. In my opinion, I feel like Nintendo hasn't really been a power focused platform, with the exception of Super Nintendo, in N64 and the GameCube, which I feel like the GameCube was the last time they actually made a powerful console. And then everything else has just been, we're going to cater to a certain different demographic with some limited options to play what's on other platforms. And I just think maybe they might do something with a beefed up Switch, which it's just the cost of something more powerful and portable. I think that's going to be pretty pricey.
Well, for indie developers especially, the Switch is a fantastic console for discovery. The Ottoman Empire's main flagship console that we all knew would do the best on was Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch is a very indie-friendly platform to be on in terms of, getting access to such a passionate fan base. You see the Nintendo fan base, who have been the main supporters of our game from day one. They're so passionate. And for indie developers to gain access to a platform that is so popular in the limelight at the moment, and to be able to gain access to such a community that they're going to get access to is a great thing. In terms of better performing hardware, we would always welcome that as an indie community. More hardware, the better. If for us, I mean, it hurts us to have to, strip some elements of our game back, to work on our platforms. We would very, very much welcome if Nintendo is working on a more powerful version of the Switch, we won't say no to it because, you know, we love the Switch. We're huge, massive Nintendo nerds at the studio at Triheart. Like, we play Overcooked. Well, we did before, obviously, before COVID. We used to have Overcooked Fridays every Friday and just sit and play Overcooked on the Switch because we love it that much, or Human Fall Flat. The Switch is just such a fantastic console. And, you know, I have no doubt that Nintendo are just going to continue to innovate on it, even from a business standpoint, the cart, because it's been such a massive seller. So, you know, the way I welcome better hardware so that indie developers continue to make great products for it, because the Switch is just such a great thing for indie developers.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one of the things I really want to ask you, you know, when it comes to the Ottoman Empire, why Otters?
Right, okay. So, a bit of context to this. So we were basically, I said, we were sat eating a chicken and waffle pizza, and this was the exact quote that came out. So the day before, we'd watched a David Attenborough documentary about otters and wildlife and learned about the different breeds. And this was the exact quote that came out of my business partner, Kieran Rogers, while we were having the meeting. So, should we make a Mario Kart? It meets Splatoon. But we'll put jetpacks and make a split screen. But we'll have otters. And we'll put it in space. And we'll call it the Ottoman Empire. Did you get it? And I sat there for a minute and I was like, that's fucking genius. And yeah, so that is where the Otters actually originally came from good old David Attenborough, the Lord and Savior of humanity himself, David Attenborough. Is David Attenborough a bigger thing in the US as he is in the UK? Because over here he's a national hero. Like, is he not big in the US?
No.
Oh, we worship David Attenborough like he's a god. Like, if David Attenborough is ever trending on Twitter, you will see the whole UK go into like meltdown at the idea that man is dead. Like, he's a sweetheart. Like, he could single-handedly save humanity, is what I say. David Attenborough. He's been trying for years. Bless him. Like, yeah, David Attenborough is basically the reason we went for Otters, but for us also, otters were a very untapped animal. Like, you don't see many games about them, and that tied into the USP of, you know, being a split-screen shooter on the Nintendo Switch, especially. But also, we were bringing these anthropomorphic animals that aren't really represented in games, really. Because aside from maybe a few little, like fur fighters, for example, how often do you really see otters in games, even indie games? They don't really get utilized. So for us, that was a big USP to utilize this animal that isn't just used often, because, you know, you see foxes, you see rabbits, and you see birds get utilized. Like, foxes seem to be like the poster child for like indie game animals.
Yeah.
But otters are just not utilized at all in the access. So we said, let's take an animal that is very adaptable. You know, we can make as many, because there are like 20 different species of otter, and we can also make them heavy customizable, because customization was a big thing for them. So we could do a lot with them, and because we weren't limited by the rules of reality, because we set the game in otter space where the rules of humanity didn't apply, so we could do a lot with not only the animals but the premise of where they were spaced as well.
Yeah, because the thing about it is, like, wait, you know, when for the younger generation, there was an era in the 16-bit time of consoles, you know, the actual console wars for you youngins that think that PlayStation versus Xbox versus Switch that's not a console war. We lived through a console war.
we lived through the real stuff. Yeah, because all right, as a dev, I'm going to end this right now.
Go ahead.
PlayStation and Xbox are more or less the same. They're more or less the same to optimize for, and they're more or less the same to build a game on, minus a few little hardware differences here and there. So there is literally no difference. So I'm ending that once and for all. The Switch is a massive difference. If you want to make an argument for that, you can carry on going ahead. But in terms of this whole Xbox PlayStation war, beyond the memes, there's not really that much difference from a dev standpoint from doing one or the other than their lot check systems.
Yeah, and it's like the companies are not even like, people think that these companies have animosity between each other. They really don't.
They work together. But I obviously can't say that much due to some NDA reasons. But like, PlayStation executives are friends with the Xbox. They go out for brunches and lunches together all day, and they learn from each other. Like, that's just how it is. You know, we work together, and the whole games industry works together. No one's against each other in this industry. Like, it makes no sense for game studios to be against each other, because we do nothing but learn from each other. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's like back in the 90s, like there was a time when you had so many different like animal mascots. Like you had Sparkster, you had Acro the Aerobat, and you had what was it, Pocky and Rocky, and it's all kinds. That's when Sonic came out in 90.
I was just about to say, you were forgetting the flagship guy there.
Which really kicked it off. Like Sega is why with Sonic is why all these other companies were trying to capture that lightning in a bottle. And it's like you think about it, there was no Otter, with the exception of Fur Fighter, character in that time. So like it's really awesome that you guys came up with a unique. You literally took something that no one's done. It brought in an animal that really no one's done at all before in a game, and just boom, an amazing game is Ottoman Empire. It's freaking awesome.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, for us it was just creating such a unique experience that hasn't been done before. And otters were just a very unutilized animal, especially within the anthropomorphic world as well. Within TV and animation, we see animated films come out all the time featuring like Zootopia or ants or Bugs Life. But how often do you really see otters get utilized, even in traditional animation? Any anthropomorphic animal, we don't really see them get utilized a lot. So that's why we chose to really go with otters, because there's just so much potential for them, and they don't get utilized, which is a really, really sad thing, because there's such dedicated otter communities in the world as well, and otters just don't get represented great in media, which is a shame, because they're such a cute and adorable animal.
True. And as far as like player feedback, what have you gotten so far from players? Any criticism, any praise? Like let's talk about it.
Yeah, of course. You're always going to get a mixed bag of praise and criticism. The game's mostly been getting 8, 7, 6s out of 10, which for our first game we're extremely proud of. This was a game that we just started making as a bunch of students, and over the years it became a business, and it became a fully fledged studio with up to 9 people working on it. So it's been a great journey for the last 3 years, and we've got a lot of praise from families who are playing it, which is the big one for me, seeing families and all the kids playing it together, the local multiplayer, thanking us for bringing such an experience, especially during lockdown, during these times where they can actually just escape that stuff and sit down with their families and grow closer as a family and play the games together, because they've got all this time to spend indoors. That's been like the big one for me. PC players are thanking us for making it such low memory and how well optimized it is. The PC community are just saying thank you for making this less than like 3 gigabytes. Trust me, guys, we really appreciate all that sort of stuff. We love getting optimization stuff. People saying they love the music, loving the characters, the customization. Because how often can you play as a crocodile and a sombrero wearing, and customization? And we've received good criticism as well. Some people are saying that the single player could lacks a bit of content in its enemy variety, and we listen to all that sort of stuff. Lack of online, when is online coming to the game, all these different elements. We are taking every single bit of that on board, and we are working on loads of new content right now. I can say some of it is new maps, new characters, and we are working on new single player content as well, more enemy variety and some other stuff that I can't talk about just yet. But we're listening to every single piece of criticism. Like we don't shy away from it. We retweet and share all the reviews, even if they're negative, and we respond to absolutely everything, because that's how you grow as a developer. That's how you grow as a person, through constructive criticism. And we like hearing absolutely everything, because this is our first game. We didn't expect 10s out of 10s, but to get given 8s and 7s, that's a privilege. Yeah. And just to hear all this amazing feedback, and just watching people play the game as well, hearing their thoughts and general, likes, dislikes, that's great for us. Like, that is so great, and we are taking absolutely all that on board. But the biggest, I would say, I'll do one for each. The biggest compliment we've received is, the praising of local cooperative play. Just that split screen, because that's where the game really shines. And there is a single player of Ottoman, which is also co-op. You can do that in co-op as well, because we even wanted to make the campaign co-op. But where the game really shines is local co-op play. That's what the game was initially designed for. So hearing people liking that has been a big thing for us. And I'd say the biggest criticism has been the lack of content within the single player, and I can completely understand that. Originally, when we started the game, it was going to be online, local only. There wasn't really planned for a single player, but then we looked at the market and realised we need to add a single player experience for the single player lovers. So the single player element of the game didn't necessarily get as much time as the local co-op. So the single player, obviously, and because we've never made a single player co-op campaign before, we've never even made cutscenes before. This game was our first time ever making characters, cutscenes, writing a story. So for us to get that criticism, we can understand where it's coming from, and we're already working on completely changing a lot of the single player to make it more difficult, or add that difficulty, add more accessibility options, more enemy varieties, just to make the gameplay more fun and engaging.
Okay. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, like, when it comes to, like, you mind telling us about the team at Triheart Interactive? Like, what's the team like? What's the chemistry and the dynamics?
Yeah, we're a pretty solid team. We're very work focused. We're all friends at the end of the day. We've been through that. But obviously, when you run a business together, you have to walk that fine line between being colleagues and friends at the same time. It's one of those. But there were 4 founders of the company originally. There's myself, my business partner Kieran Rogers, who's the creative director on the project, and the community manager and one of the directors. There's Chris Paul Taylor, who is our art lead and animation lead. Then there's Bradley Mayo, who was our environment artist. Those are the 4 founders of the company. And then we have the additional employees. So we've got Dan, our programmer. There's Caroline and Dan, our PR leads. There was Graham, who did our porting. We've had 3 audio engineers, Chris Razor, James Allenson, and Joe. We've had additional programmers like a student intern we initially took on called Tanner Squire, and Joshua Probar. There's been so many great people. Music by Martin Stonehouse, because the music is the greatest praise of all time. I can't leave Martin out. The music god, as we all call him. And there's been so many different people. We're very fortunate, for this to be our first game. We have a studio. We've been able to sit in a room together, make a game, and have that work dynamic has been really, really great. We're very work focused as a team. Like, we have a laugh. We have a great banter in the studio. It's great. And it's all nice to have that dynamic. But we also crack on and do work at the same time, except for Chris. But I'm not saying that because I know Chris is listening to this podcast, and I just really want to annoy him. #blame Chris. Chris is to blame for 99% of the problems of Ottoman Empire, because we just like blaming Chris. If something goes wrong, we just look at Chris and say, "What have you done?" Hey, I don't do any coding, so I'm not to blame if anything goes wrong with that game. And I just look at Chris and just go, "What did you do?" And sorry, Chris, I'm only bullying you. He bullies me all the time. We bully each other in that office quite a lot, so don't worry. It's all fun and joke. I can just bully him on this because I know he'll listen to it.
Oh man! So we're winding down to the last 2 questions, being completely respectful of your time. One of the questions I want to ask is, like, are there any other projects that you guys have in the works that you're allowed to speak on? I know there's a lot of things you're working on right now. There's a lot of NDAs in place, and don't want to tread or violate any of that, but if there's anything that you are able to share,
we are working on 2 projects that are under NDA at the moment. I can't talk about either of those. And then, but for Ottoman, I can say there is a ton of single and local multiplayer, as well as some additional features that has been requested by the community that are underway. I won't go into specifics about what those are. New characters, new maps, and sort of new modes. And the reason I say sort of is because if I say anything other than sort of, it'll be giving it away what they are. So you'll just have to take sort of modes as my answer for that. But yeah, tons of content for the Ottoman Empire is coming. New characters, new maps, new enemies, especially a ton of single player content. As you know, we do listen to criticism. We're not blind. We're not going to sit in an echo chamber and pretend people aren't telling us what they don't like. We do realize the single player could have been done better, and that's why we're kind of working on that element to basically make the single player stand par to par with the local multiplayer as well. Because although the local multiplayer is where the game shines, we're going to work to make the single player aspect stand just as equal with it as well. So there is a lot of single player stuff on the way coming. Well, I can't say what it is, but there is a ton of that on the way as well.
Okay. And a final question I have for you is, like, what advice would you give to the audience that maybe they want to get into the video game industry, maybe they want to get into video game design? What would you say would be, like, if you were to give them any advice? What would it be?
I'm going to give this is going to be a long answer. That's because I like to make sure people get a lot of detail on this. So
the floor is yours.
for anyone looking to start game development, game design is not easy. It is very hard. There are, especially if you're an indie developer, I'm going to tailor this advice towards indie, then I'll bring it back to working in AAA and stuff like that in a bit later on. So I've worked in both.
Okay.
Game development is very difficult. It's lots of man hours. Some of it is grueling, grinding, and meticulous work, and there are just days you want to smash your head against the wall because one thing that you fix causes 7 more to break in another area, and you've got to try and find that balance. But I'm going to offer this advice in different sets of stages. So if you're an indie developer and you're just starting out, please study the market, where things are. Look at where the market is going right now. What experiences are like. We're entering an age where although Google Stadia might not necessarily be what we thought it might be, we are entering an age where companies are looking to do the Netflix of video games. So learning to create an experience that can become adaptable to that. But then also, how can I describe it? If you're looking to make a game and you want to try and make it on all platforms and you've never made a game before, focus on a key mechanic and then make your game. And if you're ever going to learn to make a game, make something for 6 months and learn how to launch a game on Steam, get dev kits and learn how to make a small fun game which can then serve as the catalyst for a bigger idea. Because we all have these amazing visions in our head. We got very lucky, we made the game we wanted to make. But looking back, we also took part in a small co-development project called Terrorworm, which we did with another project, which was technically our first game, but it was with another studio. But that taught us all the pitfalls, all the struggles, all the highs and lows of launching a game on Steam, setting up Steam pages, marketing, getting these things in place, and creating a small project to learn how to get a game on Nintendo Switch, learn about lot check systems, because lot check systems will take up so much of your time, and learn how those systems work, developing the connections with the Nintendo and Xbox community, lot check team, so you can learn how that process is done, setting up a Steam page, learning about optimization, learning about creating a fun experience. So that's sort of what I would say is if you're going to create a game, create something which can serve as a test and a catalyst for your next big project, and learn these systems, learn Nintendo lot checks, and learn Xbox lot check, PlayStation lot check, Steam, learn how Steam works, learn about marketing on Reddit, growing a community, because these things can serve you so well if you've mastered them for when you come to do your big project. And I say the Ottoman Empire took as long as it did because we were learning as we were building the game. So for us, it was such a big thing. Sorry, I think I've lost my screen there. Am I still there? Yeah, there.
No, you're still here. You're still here.
Oh, sorry, I disappeared for a sec. Yeah. So this is going to be a big long piece of advice. Yeah. Oh. And if you're looking, say indie isn't your thing, and you want to work in AAA, and you are happy just going into a specific role, maybe you don't want to run your own studio, you don't want to be a solo, I just want to be a 3D modeler. That is fine. That is perfectly fine. But the games industry is a very, and I cannot stress this enough, competitive industry. Here's how I can put this. I'm going to use 3D modelers as an example. For every 3D artist role that you apply for, there are 200 people. If you're applying at a AAA studio, so say if you went for a 3D artist role at Sumo Digital, there are about 200 people applying for that role. What makes you stand out? And that's the key thing I try and tell people is you've got to be top of your game. If you want to work in any profession, whether you want to be a programmer or a 3D model, you've got to put that grind in. I'm not going to mollycoddle it. I won't sugarcoat it. I can be quite blunt with these things. You've got to be the best of the best. That's what these companies want. They want the best artist. They want the best programmer. They want the best porter. They want the best animator that they can get to do the job they need. So the industry will require you to be working constantly and upgrading your craft. And it's one of those industries where you have to keep moving with the times, because now we're seeing people are going to have to get better, because with the next gen of consoles, the demand for better looking games is going to get better and more and more and more, and your animation or your 3D modeling is going to have to just get better and better to keep up with the times. So the industry isn't a stale industry. It's not one of those things that you can just learn a skill and then sit back. You're constantly developing yourself as a working professional. So, and it is a lot of hard work. It isn't for the faint-hearted, So if you're going to work in this industry, you've got to be willing to put the hours, the grind in, and just the effort. That is much I will say on that element of it. And then for the final piece of advice, I would I know it's 3 sections of advice, but is remember to have fun. At the end of it, it can be a lot of hard, whether you're working AAA on a specific thing, or you're in indie trying to get your game off the ground, or you're in the studio working on a game, is that you've got to remember to have fun, because that can kill or break a studio a lot of the time. Is if you're not making a project you're not passionate about, you're not going to put your 100% effort to work into it. So make sure that you are doing what you want to do more than anything. Because I always tell people, just do what makes you happy in life. This sounds like general life advice, but just do what makes you happy at the end of the day. And that involves working in the industry as well. Like, work on projects that you want to be a part of, or work at companies that you really want to be a part of, whose work you really, because at the end of the day, get one shot. Just make sure you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah. That's solid advice. And I lied. I actually have one more question for you.
Yeah, of course.
Did you have fun today?
Absolutely. Twice in a row I've had fun at this now.
I know, right? Oh man, and that was really sound advice. I mean, not only for applying that to creative and to careers, but also to personal life, because it's one of the things like I tell other content creators, that especially ones that get burnt out, like doing podcasting or doing stream or reviewing stuff on YouTube or having websites and doing written articles. Like, a lot of people I know that are creators, they're like, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm getting tired. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Are you enjoying being a creator? Are you enjoying podcasting, streaming, reviewing, whatever? They're like, yeah. You sure? Or do you miss when you're working 9 to 5 miserable? They're like, I like the other one better. Perspective.
Yeah, of course. I wouldn't even say it's the 9 to 5 thing, but you can still get burnt out and do, like, everyone gets burnt out. I get burnt out from time to time. Mark Zuckerberg, actually, he's probably burnt out all the time. I couldn't cope with being Mark Zuckerberg. But even Mark Zuckerberg probably gets burnt out, and that's fine. You're always going to go through periods where the work sometimes gets you. Just remember to take breaks a lot and focus on your happiness at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to that point, just remember to be happy at the end of the day. But that's what you should always focus on. Whether you want to be a game dev or anything in life, we'll turn this into general life advice. Just do what makes you happy. You only get one shot, and slight controversial opinion, despite what I've got around my neck, you got one shot at life, and there may or may not be a sequel. So just make sure you do what makes you happy at the end of the day.
Definitely. And where can people find you on you and Triheart Interactive on social media?
Yeah, of course. So my personal social media is at Simran Whitham on Twitter, and Instagram you can find me at Simran_Whitham. And for Triheart Interactive, you can find us at Triheart Int on Twitter, Triheart Interactive on Facebook, and Triheart Interactive on Instagram. And then there's our Discord, where you can come speak to us the most. If you ever want to come speak to the team on a day-to-day basis, we're most active on Discord, which is the Ottoman Empire Discord. So just go to any of our social channels and you'll easily find us, or find the link to our Discord. You can't miss it. And then for Manchester Gamers Unite, you can find us at Manchester Gamers Unite on Facebook, at Mac Gamers on Twitter, and Gamers Unite Manchester on Instagram. And if you're from the UK, do come to our Manchester Gamers Unite. That's the UK's largest games industry party that we run. And you can, once the events are obviously back up and running after the pandemic is over, you can come meet our team. And we have over 15 different indies and AAAs from Ubisoft, and tons of indies on Showcase. So yeah, if you're in the UK, be sure to come check us out and come to the event sometime. We love chatting and meeting the community.
Awesome. And with that being said, guys, that's the podcast. I really want to thank my guest, Simran, again, for coming on the show, and also especially for taking time again to come back on, because it's my apologies for the technical snafus the first time.
Honestly, coming on here, you're a great podcast host. I've said it before we end this. He's a great podcast host. You're very authentic and you're organic, and it doesn't feel very scripted what you do. So I always love coming back on here. So thank you very much for having me a second time.
Hey, we got to work on having you on a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. We got to get you back on a show again, man.
Of course, man. Anytime. I'm always happy. Thank you again for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man.
Thank you for the audience for being an amazing audience.
Awesome. And you guys can catch this episode of the podcast available in video format on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova, as well as on youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova, and in audio format on all major podcast outlets from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and more. And if you want to support the podcast, we've got Patreon, and it helps greatly. Community support definitely helps, and we've got an amazing Discord. So if you guys want to hop in and help us out there and contribute, hey, Discord is a spot to be. And with that being said, I'm Mekel Kasanova. Simran, we are signing out. You guys have a great one.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova Podcast? Well, I'm sure you did. And since you did, and you're wondering where else you can find it, you can find it on every podcasting outlet. Yes, that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Launchpad DM by Podcast One, and so much more. And the only thing I ask of you is if you truly enjoyed it, even if you didn't enjoy it, please leave a rating and tell us what you thought of it, what you like, what you didn't like, and everything in between. And also, if you're looking for video formats of this podcast and many more, you'll be able to find them on youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova, as well as on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova, and new episodes every single Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, that being said, this is Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out. You guys have a great one.